My name is Rhapsody, his name is sneakyteak, and welcome back to the Ladder Streak for another week. You may notice a little bit of a slower pace at the very start here. Now that we've done the bit of the first week, immediately doing speedrunning a whole season for Season 7, that kind of thing. I think it's probably appropriate at this time to tell you a little bit about this season. We are going to be doing just 4, and they're all going to be Ascension 1. The increase of difficulty implied by the ladder of Ladder Streak is going to be provided by the characters that are more difficult to speedrun. So we're going Ironclad, then we're going Silent, and then it's... Hang on. Wait, are we supposed to do Watcher this week? We're supposed to do Watcher.
Right. No, we were gonna order it by... You're right, that was the plan.
I'm
glad we did this intro because I had forgotten.
Silent.
In preparation for Silent.
Yeah.
No, you're gonna do great. We're just gonna watch all the way to the top.
Oh, it is gonna be a damn good time. Watcher, obviously, one of the best speedrunning classes, and then we'll be looping around back to the other two. And of course, it is worth noting that this is an experiment. This is another season of the Ladder Streak. We use this show and this format to push ourselves, and this is one way in which we're pushing ourselves. However, for those of you who find the more slower paced, kind of more methodical, exploratory kind of gameplay, or rather explanatory kind of gameplay, that is going to continue existing at some point in the future as well. Do not worry, this is not a permanent state. It's just a fun experiment that we get to engage in.
But if there's any one thing that I love more than one thing, it's all things. Variety is the spice of life, and I think that it's interesting to break out of your comfort zone as a creator and also just as a gamer. And so trying to do Spire with friends speedrun was something that we thought would be not only fun and goofy, but just a different way to approach. So heck yeah, just enjoy. I mean, I think this is going to be one of the most high-paced, dynamic pieces of content that maybe we ever make. So have fun.
And it's also worth noting, we are probably going to learn things through doing this that will then be translated into other things, but they're not going to be things like, ridiculously fast speedruns for every episode. They're going to be kind of more subtle commentary-based kinds of things. So, hey, keep an eye out for those in future seasons. Also true. Now, the power of friendship compels us to click ready. Ready. Go. And then contend with our Meow bonuses here. Turn that bad boy off.
The chat draft, taking a quick look, seeing a lot of elites and contention here in the beginning. I'm happy to take Boss Relic. I think we should do a Transform and a Boss Relic. Which do you want? Transform. Okay. I've taken Boss Relic. I got a Philo Stone. And you got what cards out of your Transform? See the deck?
So I got Deva Form and Carve Reality.
Carve. Okay. That'll work. Chosen by Rap. I'm going to become nice. Become monsters. Okay. Then no penalty. Okay. Go.
All right.
Rhapsody diving in for... We can see our runner donning the glasses of gotta go fast here, trying to pick the line, observing a lot of fights as noted because all of the runners' question marks have become fights. Starting here with Watcher, and the brilliant thing about Watcher's deck is just the pure raw damage output of the Watcher deck from the beginning outpaces all other classes in the beginning. Protect, obviously not a fast card, but definitely a card that blocks and a card that blocks on the turn you need it to. We talked about that last week with Ironclad, striking the balance between gotta go fast and also gotta still beat the heart, right? Finding a little bit of block. Notably, we do have Guardian at the end of this act, so our runner, Rhapsody, already thinking about how am I going to live through those other turns. Sometimes the answer with Watcher is to just kill them before those other turns are a threat. And now we've taken a halt. So we've got Protect, we've got Halt, we've kind of brought together the block core, and as you can see, regularly doing on the order of 45 damage on turn 1, just Watcher things. Offered a few cards here. I like this Cut Through Fate pick a lot. It's got a lot of interactions. The animation, of the scry can kind of slow you down, and that's one of the struggles of Watcher compared to Ironclad. It's just pure number of clicks and animation, but very strong class. Unfortunately, it looks like Rhapsody effectively thrown into an elite fight here on floor 4, right into the Penta Slimes. Pretty nasty position to be in, but luckily we have, again, the power of the Miracle, the power of the Wrath. Lots of things gonna be dead. Cleaning it right up. trying to figure out how to next clean up the acid slime. And looking at our map as we wait, Rhapsody thinking about, am I going to go for the empowered elite or am I going to go right for the regular elite? I suspect leaning towards regular elite here, but hard to say, especially trying to take triple elite. It's a tough position to be in, but I think that we're off to the races. Lots of long-term power in Deva form, but lots of fast in the cut through fate. And in the Carve Reality, just a couple great dense cards in terms of producing damage. And then here, kind of tempted by that Crush Joints. Nice, takes it. I was interested in the Sand of Time, too. You know, it's kind of a guaranteed big hitter for something like a Lagavulin coming into this fight. But honestly, the pace is here. A little bit unlucky not seeing the Eruption yet. There it is! That's exactly the card that we wanted to see, going straight into Wrath to be able to close out this fight. That's perfect. This is absolutely something you can do as Watcher, is just enter Wrath. And there's a freaking Dead Branch with the Deus Ex Machina in the deck and the initial Miracle. Now that Miracle is drawing cards. You know what's great for winning runs? Dead Branch. You know what's hard for winning runs fast? Dead Branch. Rhapsody now has to consider every deck in the game, every fight, all the time. It's a little bit of everything all of the time, says Rhapsody, staring at a pressure points, wondering if that was good, not really knowing if that was good, but certainly experiencing it nonetheless. Notably, we are stuck in Wrath now, taking the uber aggressive path, which I super respect, given the damage capacity of this deck, and also given the capacity to turn 3 Miracles into 3 new cards. Each of these is a card draw now, and so probably able to produce what is needed. And the question is this what we need? We found a little bit of extra damage. If we can just draw 1 or 2 more attacks this next turn, we will have one of the cleanest fights against Tri-Sentries. You love to see it. Prayer Wheel means even more card picks are offered. Now Skipping says we're strong enough, we simply need to turn our cards into more cards. We have Dead Branch, why wait? Gotta go fast. Eruption upgrade means that we can play out more of the cards in hand, which is good, because effectively Dead Branch is draw, right? So leaning into a lot of things. Now I hear you right now, I hear you. Teak, is this really a speed run? And it's a good point that you're making, because when I have done this before, I have described it as the difference between a speed run and just a good run played really fast. And right now we're leaning more towards just a good run played really fast. Okay, we've got a bunch of just very good regular cards that you might choose to take if you'd like to win a run of Slay the Spire, and we have to play them very quickly, which means super dense turns, okay? So what we're observing, what we're seeing, and what we're appreciating is how many good plays we see amidst that intensity of the speed. Centennial Puzzle, even more draw. Centennial Puzzle, I didn't talk about the strike dummy. Every strike is effectively upgraded in Rhapsody's deck right now, which means our turn 1 capacity is massive. It's turning out that Bane given by Niao, turning every question mark into a fight, may be more of a boon. It turns out fights are pretty good. Fights give you cards, fights give you money. We like fights, and we win them too. 45 health coming into the Guardian too means we're in a pretty good position to be able to win that. Kind of debating now, do we take more tough? Do we take more stuff? Reach Heaven is for the Through Violence. Through Violence becomes not only damage, but another card. All Dead Branch, all the time, right? We're just making answers. If you don't have answers, well, just accident end to them. Deus Ex Machina, very appropriate, actually. I've never thought about how appropriate Deus Ex Machina is as a card with Dead Branch. That's perfectly, incredibly, beautifully poetic. All of those things. Brilliance, and just producing a card here that I love to see, because Brilliance, in the absence of any mantra, says do 12 damage, which is like an incredible 1-cost attack for Watcher. So often happy to pick that up. Notably absent from Rhapsody's deck right now, multiple mechanisms to get into Wrath. So we're basically just playing Eruption and then praying. We're going to be looking for more mechanisms to interact with the stances, because we're picking up more, we're picking up more, we're picking up more. And the question is, how do we make sure that we increase that damage? Empty Mind there, a mechanism to leave that Wrath. And now I wonder, will the runner pause here, or will the runner go straight into Guardian?
Let's leave this for you. Oh boy. Whew. All right. So now we see Teak over on his screen is going into this first fight against the Jawworm. Got a Philosopher's Stone. Oh, thank you for the attention drawn to it. From that boss swap at the very beginning, is going to be able to leverage that extra energy to be able to do a lot more start stuff with the Vigilance and the Eruption prior to an upgrade. is tempted by the inner piece, recognizes that it fits in most effectively to a little bit of a slower playstyle, but also, hey, you gotta do stuff. Eventually, in this game, you got to do some stuff sometimes. That was very much the kind of tone of mine as well. I do hope that over here for Teak, we see something like our tantrum in particular. Feels like it would come into good use here. Ragnarok, other sorts of like instant boons and gains of that ilk. We see a Flying Sleeves halt and weave on offer here. Weave also part of a slower playstyle, the Flying Sleeves, making sure there is some damage on lock for the turn. That also does give you the ability to just hold the Flying Sleeves in hand until the turn you should be able to get into your Wrath. Wrath and by extension, the ability to get into devotion instantaneously through things like blasphemy or, you know, Sneko Eye worships and those kinds of things. Really, really heavily incentivize the Watcher here to be able to utilize her hold on to a couple cards theming in the retain. Is here to store, has a couple options. One of the best things that exists for the speedruns of this character is Tantrum and Wreath of Flame. Unfortunately, it's really hard to take the Wreath of Flame before you get the Tantrum. The Tantrum is so key to being able to perform in that way. Here we see also Teak taking a very, very aggressive pass with Gremlin Knob, knowing that the first turn is the primary time to be able to knock down that knob. And sure, you may end up taking damage on a following turn. It's entirely possible. Teak here deciding whether or not he has the ability to generate more damage on the next turn, chooses to use the Gambler's Brew, pushing his way through the rest of the fight without having to take that 14, also gets the Dead Branch. Knowing that that Dead Branch was in the future may have helped guide some of Teak's picks here, and definitely will be better utilized by something like the Philosopher's Stone, making sure that he has a little bit of extra energy to be going along with on these turns, is faced with the same fight that we had and the same lack of AoE that we happen to have at the time that we had it, is deciding at this point whether or not he wants to take out a target or probably use that Vigilance. Does take out 2 targets, accepts the 12 from the enemies, knowing that he has the ability to clean it up immediately afterwards. Also worth noting, Teak does have that beautiful golden idol over there, as well as
Tri-Sentries? Tri-Sentries was second?
Tri-Sentries was second, yes. As well as the Thorns from Bronze. So we have passive damage from those Thorns being passed out. We've got that specifically against the Guardian, who makes attacks of 2 and attacks of 4 at different times throughout it, meaning that there is a lot of damage that is already on the table available there. Unfortunate first turn against this big old slime, just doing as maximum damage as they possibly can, and unfortunately not a giant amount of damage density in the next hand either. Hopefully here we see something that allows him to run over the top of it a little bit. Not the world's best split, but not the worst. Not the worst. This will... Ooh, this is the situation you don't want to see, where it's possible that 2 of them don't go down. If that Cut Through Fate can get an aggression card of some kind, there we go. That's going to be able to close the fight for Teak right there. Beautiful. Saves a hell of a lot of damage there. Obviously, the 22 being particularly cruel. We see Teak here, making the opposite decision. Whoa! That... okay.
Oh, no.
Teak just did exactly what I did.
It's the speed. It's the speed.
The speed will do it to you sometimes. Obviously, the consideration there being Master Reality will increase the value of all of the cards from the Dead Branch. They will come into your deck upgraded. It is one of the effects that I've wanted to see in the base game for a really long period of time, like a Quantum Egg kind of effect, if you happen to get my drift on that one. Face Trader is available here, and we get the Cleric Face. Extremely valuable pickup right there. 2 sources for Wrath in this opening hand. One of them having a little bit of AoE attached to it as well. Looking like a good option here. Teak takes it. Also holds that crescendo for another turn in the future, possibly leading him into the ability to use a Vigilance next turn. Unfortunately it didn't. We see here that Teak is considering the damage that he has against the targets on field. It is, beautiful. It's good to see that Vigilance coming out and allowing Teak to be able to manipulate his energy a little bit more. The crescendo giving a tranquility, giving its own way out of itself, baby. Isn't that just damned neat? Isn't that just damn comfy when it happens to do exactly what you need it to do when you need it to do it?
Taking such a weird slow line through this fight.
Unfortunately, it does happen from time to time, but the speed of this fight increases dramatically as soon as you start getting into those dazes with the old Dead Branch show, as it happens to exist there. We see 2 cards being added in, the Cut Through Fate and the Flying Sleeves being tucked behind my own Flying Sleeves over here. And Teak finishes out the fight, takes down the sentries, gets his 1 max HP and the Pocket Watch. Damn, if the Watcher was not previously already about that life. Oh, the 75 not available to be able to send over the pack of rares, unfortunately.
Should I just keep going?
I think you should.
Okay. The tikiest play, not having enough money to do the thing.
It'll happen. The crescendo on 0 cost, I really like this. Gives Teak the ability to extend a turn a little beyond its possibilities otherwise. Also guaranteeing that he has the ability to push out the maximum amount of damage immediately after some kind of a crescendo. Also saving energy because the crescendo is going to generate a card. Wheel kick that bad boy. He goes down to the ground. He's having a bad time. He's not having a good day. 2 extra energy left here for Teak, knowing that the cut through fate there would have drawn into a new draw pile, possibly losing some of the cards that he wanted to get into the next cycle. The Simmering Fury and Vigilance and the fact that Teak is managing to almost entirely fill his hand basically every turn is giving him a lot of control over his starting kind of situation. I wouldn't be surprised to have, or rather, sorry, the Pocket Watch is also contributing towards that. Definitely worth noting. I would not be surprised to see Teak trying to get value out of some sort of starts dancing situation for this character as we continue going onwards. We see a giant amount of damage trying to come out of the enemy here, but hey, do you care about that much at all when you have the ability to halve it down and get back into calm? Ain't that just beautiful when it works out perfectly? Here we see the Guardian on half HP starting to shake in its little booties. You can see its arms are going up and down like that. What it's trying to say at the time is, do you see me shivering? And we do. We see it shiver, shake, and shimmy. Actually, it's doing a little bit of a dance. We can see it getting further inside of its own shell as it gets knocked the heck down there. Teak forcing extra energy out of a swap into and out of calm there, knowing that he only has 1 action left to have to commit in this fight. Beautiful.
Woo! Hit me! Rhapsody lined up to follow in the treads, to ride the coattails, to surf the wake through this Guardian fight with a little bit more block power than in the Tiki deck, but just as much Dead Branch and a little bit more Deus Ex Machina, and asking himself, do I want to block through this turn? Or are we going to go ahead and split? Has access to a Flex Potion, has access to an Explosive Potion, a few options to push, and it's just all about how aggressive you want to be. Sometimes Watcher gets to Guardian, and you just go ahead and kill Guardian on turn 2 or 3. You just go ahead and ignore the Thorns. Sharp Hide, different. And you go ahead and blast your way through. Both of us have chosen a line somewhere down the middle, a little bit of blocking, but then ultimately preparing to go fully nuclear alpha strike this fool, because here we are on turn 4, and Rhapsody is asking, where's my lethal? And as we like to say on my live stream, if you're asking yourself whether or not you have lethal on Watcher, you had it 2 turns ago. And so here we are. The enemy is dead. No surprises there, able to destroy in short order, and now wondering, how do I do this? Do I take this Fire Potion? Do I want another Deus Ex Machina with the Dead Branch? Answer is yes, baby. We love to see it. Looking takes a Cursed Key. You love to see that too. Saber's Collar.
All right.
Ghost Rider. Big House. Beginning of battle, shuffle up the 2 rare cards from your teammates' decks. Available cards, Deus Ex Machina Brilliance, Day of a Form, Big House. Do you want to just take value? Just Big House it? Or do you want to shuffle some Deus Ex Machinas? Turn 1, Alpha Strike.
Getting a Deus Ex Machina in my opening hand is pretty good. What could I give you?
I have a Deus Ex Machina too. We just give each other bottled Deus Ex Machina.
Hell yeah.
Is that good enough?
Oh,
what happened?
I haven't chosen.
Me
Shuffle
neither.
up to 2 rares from... Okay, so no, it doesn't even choose anymore.
Right. Okay. Yes, that's, we don't choose. It just picks them. Okay.
All right. Get about it.
Who's running?
You.
Get about it.
Okay, that's going to get us in a really, really good position. I mean, specifically, it's going to be very, very good for Teak. I have a couple of the rare cards in here in the deck that I intend to upgrade. Teak already having the possibility of getting access to a Deus Ex Machina
Shuffled
Plus.
into the deck.
Not drawn, shuffled into the deck. Ghost Rider doesn't work the same as it used to. Damn, we got
it was too
bamboozled.
strong. we
It's
got
too
super
dang strong. We can
bamboozled
already
here.
see the buffed Philosopher's Stone birds here. That's going to be a hell of a thorn in the side of Teak here. However, guess about thorns in sides? You know the thing about thorns in sides? The thing about thorns in sides is it's going to be in their sides as well. What with those 3 thorns that are going to be causing each of them to be taking 30 damage over the course of this turn. Teak having the ability to put one of them down on the ground, lowering the amount of damage that he's going to be taking in return to the enemies. Not 30, it's 15. 5 by 3 is 15.
Dude, we should have taken the house. Crap.
Should have taken the house, unfortunately.
There's so much to think about.
That's how it goes. I mean, Watcher has a huge toolkit, right? You can't really easily limit it down to the kind of whirlwind and feed reaper kind of situation that you may be able to do with something like an ironclad. The toolkit is a lot more expansive. Here we see Teak setting down one of the enemies, knowing that it is going to die before it actually manages to complete the attack against Teak there. Oh, that's an aggression and a half right on that top. Unfortunately, it is too dead to be able to actually deliver that. We see a couple upgraded options here, none of them looking ridiculously good for speed. Flurry of Blows maybe a little bit. We see Teak does have a little bit of theming in his deck, being able to jump back and forth between different stances. Elects not to go for it. Probably assessing that it would be relatively slow to try and focus on getting the maximum effect out of those. The Judgment in its maximal impact. Beautiful. That was from the Dead Branch as well, wasn't it, right? Hell yeah, from the Dead Branch from the... Sorry?
It must have been, yeah, it must have been. But how did it hit on turn 1?
It was the Deus Ex Machina exhausting itself as soon as it enters your hand.
You're right.
Whoa, here we have a situation where completely different choices could be made in a fast and a non-fast attempt of a Watcher run here. Instead, we see Teak taking an option to upgrade 2 cards in his deck rather than something like a Mental Fortress that might have otherwise made its way in here. The Prey also giving some more access to energy being the kind of thing that you really care about if you have the ability to generate as many cards as you'd like. And then Prey also giving the Insight, which is even more card generation and draw. Can definitely see getting behind that. Also primes Teak to be able to take any future possibilities in that realm. Also, the Master Reality comes back, never punished, unlikely to ever be punished. That looks like it's also Teak's second rare. Teak's second rare. Oh my good giddy gosh, because that means that bad boy's coming across to ya boy, ain't it? We see here the Taskmaster standing strong and standing tall. Teak, thankfully in this position, does have 2 explosive potions. The worst case scenario heavily mitigated by knowing that he has the ability to back the heck back out of it should he like to. 5 energy. 5 whole energy that Slaver's Collar and the Philosopher's Stone already picked up prior have been able to give to Teak. Already getting into Divinity courtesy of a play from an Omniscience there. And then just styling all over these enemies, trying to choose how exactly do I want to make them suffer, because I could do it any which way. And chooses the way that gets 2 of them to die in tandem with one another. They can get a 2-for-1 in the graveyard. The Gravekeeper is probably going to be okay with that. The Undertaker as well. Spirit Shield, Fear No Evil, and Tranquility all showing up here as options for Teak. Teak trying to assess whether or not he wants to lean a little bit more back into the other play style of jumping between different stances. Intends instead to use the effects of things like the card generations that Teak already has access to in his deck, as well as the retains, to get a giant block turn out of a Spirit Shield. A lot of the time, that will just effectively be 1 turn's worth of intangibility, rather. Sorry for Teak here. Especially in a circumstance where he still has, in elite fights and boss fights afterwards, 3 energy. That's a whole turn after the turn that you took to completely block your enemies. Getting some giant block available there. This hand just absolutely filled to the brim with miracles. We know what Teak needs now, and we know that it happens to be a Bottle Tornado. That Master Reality would have all these bad boys upgraded, including the miracles, baby! Including those miracles. Ooh, boy. Not taking any damage in this fight just yet, just waiting for the opportunity to get some more aggression, possibly holding onto the Flying Sleeves for this turn. Yes, trying to look for something else that is going to be able to get him into a more wrathful situation and state. Unfortunately, not necessarily finding it immediately there. Finding it afterwards, though, being able to clean down 2 targets near the opening and using Through Violence to target the final, killing them through violence. We can see a couple different options here being offered to Teak. Teak shoring up his defense with the third eye and a mental fortress, trying to give himself a little bit more of a fighting chance against the Heart, who is not going to be completely amenable to the plan of just killing him instantaneously. Woo! It's a thwack, baby! Okay, I already know that I'm going to be looking for some question marks in the late game because this thwack event is going to be heavily utilized here by Teak. It shouldn't be too much of a problem for him. It may require him to take a couple lumps, not necessarily this turn with a complete block of the enemy's output of damage there. More cards than anyone could possibly ever utilize immediately get discarded. Their Master Reality and Brilliance and Flying Sleeves leaving themselves in the draw pile for the possibility of being picked up later. The Bowling Bash really just wishing that one of these would happen to generate, unfortunately it has not yet, a source of Wrath. Just any source of Wrath, such that Teak would have the ability to throw out those damage for the largest amount of damage points available from them. The concludes the life of the Netta back in the back line there. Excuse me. And a Brilliance concludes the life of the front line. Immediately, Teak decides here that he is not a coward. He fights for victory. He is going to be taking these enemies down. It is also worth noting that, as we were talking about the Gremlin fight in the last floor, being able to push your aggression early against the Gremlin Knob a lot more powerfully in this deck as Watcher and in this toolset as Watcher than you are able to as other characters. Teak is going to be able to leverage that here. Unfortunately, the opening hand not particularly aggressive, also not really particularly containing the tools to get immediately aggressive thereafter. We're seeing a little bit of lack of Wrath, unfortunately. It's also a little limiting in this position for Teak to not be able to just play those miracles digging for cards because of the threat of making the Gremlin Knob a little too large to be able to contend with the Simmering Fury, setting him up to be able to make more advantage of that in the future. We've also got a Worship and 2 Miracles and a Flying Sleeves that will be retained here, so we're going to get to a hand of 10 full cards in the next turn, and that's not even with the requirement of... Damn! He could have drawn so much more than the hand was possible to contain at that point, but it does look like he has the tools in this hand to be able to put out the damage. We can see there's a signature move directly behind Teak that he is a little covering with his head, but it is okay. It is getting back towards the center of the hand and is a very accessible way to get lethal here, what with all the extra energy that he has the ability to generate with the miracles. Doesn't even need it. Ooh. Just does not even need it. Gets a golden eye and a strike dummy. Ooh, baby. Getting that damage points out there, left, right, and center. Trying to decide if he wants to go to the left or maybe pick up one of those upgraded cards. Yep.
It's just a regular deck.
It's just a regular deck. To be clear, we wanted to be offered a lot of things we haven't found at all yet, so we're kind of just playing a very fast run. That is the thing that is consistently being intimated here. But hey, it is a-okay. Sometimes that is how it happens on a speedrun. We're not playing in seeded. We're trying to speedrun with what the game happens to give us, and that sometimes is very little. We see Teak here making excellent usage of this first turn, taking down both of the chumps, buying himself 2 turns worth of time to try and ruin the day of this Gremlin leader without having to really deal with any riposte from them. Unfortunately, the deck's showing that it doesn't want to be particularly aggressive when Teak does. It'll have the turns of full defense and turns of full aggression and very little in between at this point. Nirvana having the ability to provide some block when a scry effect occurs. The Golden Eye, not necessarily providing its own scry effects, but the Melange has already gone by. We saw that in an earlier store. It was ignored. So we're looking for more sources like a Just Lucky, more sources like a Cut Through Fate. Those kinds of things would be really good to synergize with the Golden Eye in particular, trying to get through the inconsistency that is sometimes rearing its ugly head here in this deck. Deciding whether or not the Worship gets dropped, it does not. The Divinity is going to be accessible in the next turn, Simmering Furying his way down to enough cards to be able to leverage those for lethal. I feel pretty confident that Teak is going to be able to bring this one out on this turn, what with the whole Worship situation and having the damage immediately available in hand. Just seems like that might be the kind of thing that clinches lethal for you there occasionally. Teak breathing a sigh of relief as he manages to leave that fight, choosing whether or not another Worship is the way that this speedrun goes. It is entirely possible, and it is the way that this speedrun appears to be going, especially viable in a circumstance where you have 5 energy already before the end of floor 2 in your elite and your boss fights. To be clear, it's also worth noting those Worships may not need to be played in fights that aren't the elite and boss fights, and they also return to you the amount of energy plus a little. No, actually, just a little less than the amount of energy that you invest in them, assuming you paid full cost Here we see a setup of a couple different options here in the first turn, getting a really good setup for a giant amount of draw as well as energy and damage set up for the next turn, seeing if the Centurion has the ability to go down here with the Eruption of Flying Sleeves, or pulling from the Miracle to try and get a little bit more in the way of the ability to take those down. Never mind, it was a Miracle actually. I was hiding behind myself here. Devotion has begun. Almost anything feels like it is going to start trouncing over these enemies. Unfortunately, it looks like the damage has just run out, but that is a-okay. This deck ain't just done yet. It's got more damage to do and more time to do it. That brilliance has been heavily, heavily buffed by the play of the worships as well. Another one of the reasons that you have the ability to go further into a more devotion-based path. Unfortunately, I was looking away from the screen for a second. What was this?
Just played the hand.
It happens occasionally. That is a-okay.
It's gonna happen
in a speedrun. Baby.
A lot of decisions to make.
Talk to the hand. Gonna tell the enemies very rudely to talk to the hand, and they are very, very happy to do so, frankly. Well, look, they might not be happy to do so, but I can't hear their complaints because, as aforementioned, they are talking to the hand, and the hand rarely has ears. Very rarely has ears. We're seeing here Teak trying to see if he has the ability to push this fight as fast as possible to get a target down, possibly entirely for the Chosen to try and get them down before they actually start throwing those hexes into the deck, should Teak get a little bit of a slower draw here than he otherwise might like. Holding very, very cleverly onto those explosive potions, knowing that the next floor is also going to be a little bit threatening in terms of the explosive fights that you may want to drop them on. Also knowing that there is a future where he may need to drop them on later fights here. We see the Collector is in particular the boss that we are going to be fighting at the end of this floor. Very, very vulnerable to a giant blowout turn. However, unfortunately, if you're a little slow on that, he really wants you to take down his minions. Seeing more damage being allocated directly to the backline here.
I think I could have done it. I needed to just believe.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to just believe, but I didn't want to throw.
That is the unfortunate thing, right? In a speed run, it feels like you can make some mistakes, but you can't make mistakes with Blasphemy. Blasphemy will just straight up kill you.
Can't make them all.
You can make a very specific subset of mistakes are available for players to make in this game. The Collect there, pretty much damned guaranteeing this enemy is going to go down in the next turn. Even if it isn't through the draw, that Miracle is going to draw another card, and that card's going to be lethal, baby. Whoa, wave of the hand, another talk to the hand. That is defense on lock for Teak right here. That is ridiculous. We are going to try and say, or rather, we are going to see Teak try and limit himself in further defensive takes, leveraging the power of the talks to the hand to be able to leverage his aggression back into more defense. This fight in particular, particularly aggressive, not wanting exactly to go into that eruption, knowing that he has the the pocket watch that is going to be allowing him to draw a little more next turn. Unfortunately, the popping of the pyramid means that he was always going to get those cards, though also worth noting, maybe don't want to play the eruption in that position. It's nice to set yourself up, but it's also rough to die. That seems like very rarely a good strategic decision. Not exclusively, never a good strategic decision. Mine, sometimes you want to die to a certain attack so you can get the certain healing back up. Hey, you know, there's edge cases every which way in this kind of a game. We see a couple options here in Teak's hand, specifically the scroll as well as a lot of energy, giving Teak the ability to do a hell of a lot of things with his hand, hopefully drawing into a little bit more energy or a little bit more damage to be able to knock someone off of the field. Teak knowing that he has the ability to... Wait, no. I have misprojected whether or not Teak has the ability to jump back out of this form in this turn. It's a Flying Sleeves behind myself. That scroll possibly having the ability to draw us into it. If not, hey, kill enough of the targets and it'll be a-okay anyway. The explosive potions going out here, yes, as aforementioned, they are going to be particularly useful in a position like this. The follow-up even allowing a push of a little bit more damage. Hopefully there's just enough damage to take that target down, despite the weakness that was applied by the frontliner to Teak in the last turn. A very rude action, frankly, to be taken by the enemy at the time that they took it. 4 energy left available, definitely possible. Teak just looking for the most efficient way to be able to utilize that effect, possibly seeing if he has the ability to squash out both of these on the same turn, or not. Looks like he does indeed. Beautiful, good to see it. That gets the emerald as well. Ooh, Teak deciding whether or not Foresight's too
It's a
slow,
regular
decides
attack.
it is not going to be making...
Play. I'm okay. And so is Rhapsody diving into Act 2 to follow in the storied footsteps of a Watcher, fast. Straight into the birds, notably a little less aggressive. These birds cannot reincarnate. There is no philosophizing. These birds do not consider their existence. They only bird. Notably, the birds in this game make a sound effect that sounds exactly like the wildcat sound from a Rat-a-tat song. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. It's the same. So I don't know why these birds are also wildcats, but I suspect that there may be some distant historical relation. I have not looked into the family tree of the birds. I'm not suspecting that these birds even live in trees. These are trash birds, or maybe city birds, back alley birds. They're looking for the carcass of a Watcher to pillage. I haven't said a single thing about Slay the Spire, but frankly, how can you? We're just clicking on blasphemy here. We're just clicking on blasphemy and clicking on birds. It's bird clicking and blasphemy clicking because we probably got it. We're probably gonna get there, we say. And indeed, lo, we found the way to the exit. It's truly nonsense. It's all nonsense all the time. It's all dead branch all the time, but it seems to be getting us to the pinnacle. But here's a real Spire consideration. When you have a deck that's a new deck every turn, and I said this in Act 1, when you have a deck that's constantly creating new decks, you gotta play really carefully. And you know what makes it hard to play really carefully? Playing really fast. So basically our gamble is just that Watcher is so powerful that as we click on the new cards that come into the screen, that they will also successfully win the fight for us. It's kind of like Luck Be a Landlord. You just put all of the things into the slot machine and then you just pull it. You just pull the slot machine and you hope that it successfully slays. And so far so good. When that blasphemy shows up, that's when it gets really hairy, but I'd like to see that play out of Raps, and I like the fact that it paid off, because being fast and being strong go hand in hand for this character on this day. What we're looking for now is a bit more consistency. And oh boy, there's the wish, and Raps thought about it. He was like, oh, it exhausts, but man, that's a slow card. You gotta make a lot of decisions. Do you want to regret, says the video game. Rhapsody says, I have plenty, thank you. Not looking for that one. I'm not window shopping for regrets today. I will catch you later. Now, Rhapsody thinking here, I've got potions. Do I need to use a flex potion? Do I need to use a fire potion? Like, what do I need to push down these enemies on this turn? And I like any of those options. Probably using one potion here, almost necessary in order to secure some additional health. Just to kill a single slaver on turn 1 is a massive, massive health savings in this fight. But didn't quite turn out. Blocks as hard as he can. You know, takes just a little bit of damage, just 12 damage here. Didn't have the speed glasses on, and that was part of the struggle. It's definitely important to get into the zone. If you've ever watched a professional athlete, they tend to have these elaborate rituals, okay? You watch a pitcher on the mound in baseball, and they touch their cap, and they turn their cap, and you can imagine that the glasses give Rhapsody that same kind of power. Putting them on enables Rhapsody to enter into the mindset, which allows him to be bold enough to do 42 damage with a conclude. And that's the way you do it. That's how you get it. You get your elite fights for nothing, and your relics for free. And that's exactly what Rhapsody intends to do today. Looking at a handful of potential worships, asking himself, do I want to just go straight in to that sweet, sweet divinity next turn? Says yes. A little bit worried about his health at this point. Sees that 42 number, thinking about the elite fight coming up, and is realizing that there's a bit of balance to do, but knows that the second elite fight is Gremlin Leader, and knows that Explosive Pot and Fire Pot both contribute to making that fight a lot safer. The one that I had was coming in with an attack on turn 1. We'll get to see here if we're frequently seeing the same attack patterns out of non-deterministic fights. Who knows? My expectation is that we're going to see a Gremlin Leader who's attacking, but it's possible that we do not. Sees Prostrate, thinks about it, sees Simmering Fury, says yes, I will, thank you. Gremlin Leader not attacking. Incredible. That is multiple times now that I've seen my theory debunked that enemies will have the same attack patterns. I've not concluded what causes them to change. We were saved by this when we shared a run where one of us had Dome, but perhaps really what we got was lucky. We flipped a coin and we saw heads. Looks like this is helping Raps too, to be able to push down this fight. Love to see the Indignation getting some vulnerable. Not a card that I see often, but actually I really like the bimodality. And, does not kill off the leader, but does kill off the leader ultimately. Looking at Tranquility, looking at a third eye. Tranquility says draw 1 card, intercom. Pretty cool. Notably, we have the Cursed Key, notably pulls a blue candle, which means those curses can now be exhausted. And you know what exhausted cards do? Make more cards. That's the power of the Dead Branch. Anything that you can click on and make disappear is a good thing for Raps. And hey, that looks like turn 1 Centennial Puzzle proc to be able to push down this fight in whatever way Raps sees fit. Now looking for some opportunity to block as much as possible, but generally it's all downhill from here. Now let's talk about some things at the high level, okay? Because the cards are clicking, and it's beautiful to watch. But here we are in the middle of this match, all right? We're situated on the pitch. Our players are angled towards victory. What's going on? We have one major liability that we're carrying, which is collectively over 1,200 gold. We are the richest watchers ever. And we're trying to figure out how we can turn all of that potential value into real strength in the run. Not a talk to the hand. Unfortunately, it's a different card with a hand on it. I one time counted, I think that 90% of Watcher's cards have a hand on them. I have concluded that picking cards with hands on them as Watcher is a strong play to make. But hey, don't listen to me. Go do the math yourself. Go check out the compendium. There's a lot of hands. Watcher may have been a hand model at some point. I have not been able to get response from her on that one. She seems to be busy inspecting the Spire or something. Who knows? Not very responsive. Very, very busy, the Watcher. So she claims, looking at a Snecko fight and thinking, you know, confusion is kind of a pain. I like it when my attack cards are cheap, but luckily if there's anything that our decks have going on, it's a lot of energy generation, and the energy generation is in the form of miracles, which means as that is generated during the turn, it's safe from Snecko's wrathful gaze. Looking at more cards, thinking about double upgraded Cut Through Fate, wondering how much scry we can manage in a speed run, wondering if we can take another Tri-Slavers fight. Answer yes! Dives straight in, certainly has the right potions for it too. Looking to be a bit more aggressive on this one, it seems. Goes for that turn 1 kill with straight up potion damage. You'd love to see it. I feel really good about that play because I think that the Fairy in a Bottle is well positioned to be the insurance that Raps needs for the upcoming fight with the Collector, even more so than the damage. Get the damage out of the potions now in order to have a little bit more health to maneuver through the first turns, so that then if there's a turn where Raps has to take 60 damage from Collector, Vulnerable, and in Wrath, he can do so while closing the fight. Love the play and excited to see how it might turn out for him. And you'll note that both of us are eagerly accepting basically any cheap card that also says exhaust. And that's because I think that the name of the game on this run now is just keep clicking until you find the right answer, right? We just hope that the deck will create the deck that we need. And we hear getting rid of a Parasite for 100, giving me a card, looking at the card, skipping a Parasite, looking at the card, giving me another talk to the hand. Thank you. And then I think going straight into the boss fight. Make it so.
Got it.
Choose a card. Oh, I got 2 cards. Why did I get... Oh, you sent me another pack?
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Rhapsody is upgrading a worship. I like the play, holding the right thing for the right time. Also, Rhapsody has been sent an old coin, which I didn't think about until just now. That'll be nice. That's 300 gold. But we will get it in the next act. Okay, so the big decision that Raps has to make here, and that I'm going to love to watch play out, is are we just going to try to kill Collector right away, or are we going to manage the mobs in slow roll? It's like Guardian all over again, and I suspect he's starting to ask himself, with all of these worships, am I in a position to just go ahead and do 250 damage? And with the Vulnerable online, I would argue that the answer is yes. The Brilliance on this turn doing 117 damage. Miracle's making cards. We've got a Tantrum. We've got a signature move. We've got a Conclude. Big number generation. There's also a Tranquility here. Really curious turn.
God damn it.
Option always to just click the Conclude and call that a turn.
Yeah.
14. Will live with just a Conclude. With a Simmering Fury Conclude. I like that play.
I don't. Sorry.
It's so hard. Down to 4 life. Collector says, screw you. I'm feeling eager today, but Rhapsody with a handful of miracles says, well, you know what I believe in, buddy? And that's the size and scale of your tombstone. I've already ordered it.
You know what I
We're
believe
getting
in,
it
you
engraved
sexy
right now.
thing? Time for you to go in your fight. Baby! Woo! We're collecting hearts and breaking them thereafter. Teak running into his store. Not a store, a courier, sorry. Deciding here to leverage the rest in order to have the ability to take possibly a similarly aggressive line such as the one that we took. Also having the ability to leverage the focus of those worships. Uses the pocket watch here very adeptly to try and draw into a very specific next hand. Also has access to scry 6, throws all of the cards. So we can see that this turn, he literally just threw away a whole turn's worth of cards. Without the foresight there, would not have been able to get as aggressive as he currently is using the talk to the hand on the backline target so that he has the ability to try and just lay as hard as he can into them while generating defense for himself. Also has a wave of the hand set up, all the enemies constantly getting weakened. They are now perma-weakened for the rest of the battle. They are easier, not easy, but easier to ignore than they otherwise might be. Decides here to just let the torches just exist. Let them hang out. They can watch, and they will be intimidated by what is about to happen to the collector in the back line. Teak seeing his next hand full of value, but not necessarily instantaneous value. It's possible this ends up being another setup turn for a future turn. Deus Ex Machina being a particularly good utilization turn to be able to launch into at some point in the future. That Spirit Shield in the hand providing a hell of a lot of defense that Teak is going to have the ability to just activate at any time should he wish. The vulnerability not necessarily as extant in Teak's deck as it is mine. The Indignation being a big, gigantic pickup that I was very, very happy to make, although I don't have as much access to Wrath as Teak. So a leveling on each of those fields seems like it'd be particularly good here. Teak trying to decide whether or not he wants to start digging into any of the tools for the rest of his deck, whether or not Cut Through Fate or Wheel is going to be a good idea here. He's electing to throw out at least a little bit more damage against the collector and see a couple more cards in the deck. Has the ability to dig down to a Worship or a Vigilance, giving him the ability to get out of this mode and back into this mode in the next turn with the Simmering Fury. Elects not to go with that. Never mind, does elect to go with that, but it's a-okay. This happens, speed happens. It is...
Act 2 bosses. My nemesis.
Act 2 bosses do happen, but your nemesis is an Act 3 elite. I can't believe you forgot that. It's just ridiculous. We see the play of the Master Reality here right before any of these miracles, giving T the ability to get upgraded cards throughout the rest of this combat. That Conjured Blade definitely kind of sitting there as a little bit of a consideration of, maybe I'm just a set up and blow him up in a single turn kind of thing, knowing that T does have access to a lot of devotion. The Conjure Blade itself getting generated from a Conjure Blade as well. You love to see it, or at least you do see it. A zero-cost Conjure Blade, not necessarily always contributing well, but that one wasn't zero-cost. It importantly did still have a single strike on it, which makes it on par with something like a Brilliance, especially without that many plays in the way towards it. 2 worships available in the hand here, so T does have access to Divinity, but may not necessarily want to pop it this turn. Knows that one of those worships is going to retain. He's trying to decide exactly how many of his resources to push out here. Has it conclude, so he knows that he doesn't have to take a ridiculous amount of damage here, but it's currently still dying to just the Collector in the back line. He's looking for some way around the edge of that. The Tranquility and Inner Peace offering a little bit of possible draw should Teak want it, or a Flying Sleeves if he just wants to gain some more defense from attacking the backliner. Does so, gets out of aggression, and as a result manages to generate a full block on the turn. We can see that Worship and that Insight both setting up Teak for a very, very powerful turn here, should he manage to draw some more of his aggression cards. Doesn't have any card draw left in his hand, but does have a little bit of card generation should he want to play the Tranquility, but that will turn off a giant amount of his damage. Happy to just take a turn where he has the ability to pump out enough damage, just enough. Sometimes Devotion is just a really good way to get yourself some extra energy, and that's enough. It doesn't necessarily have to do absolutely everything it has access to at the time. Ooh, baby, is that an alpha? Did you seriously just alpha?
No, I took another Deus Ex.
Oh boy. Oh,
more
boy.
Deus Ex.
Oh,
Deus Ex.
Deus full.
Do we need more energy? What do we need? Brief discussion. T. What did you take? What did you take?
I took the bell. I rung the bell. I rang the bell.
I like that. You've got the blue candle. I like that. I'm thinking about taking Astrolabe.
That could be totally reasonable. I mean, look, you have a lot of energy at your disposal already, and you have... Oh my... Remember when we said we want a tantrum? Anyway.
I like the bell.
Oh, it's a good one. Got the bell, Orichalcum, Gremlin Horn, and Goldeneye. Kind of happy about the gold. Ooh, baby, Bonds of Fate replaces. We also have a dimensional wallet. We have a lot of money burning a hole in our pocket. We could possibly take the dimensional wallet and just try and run along with that. Try and invest in the player who needs it a little bit more. We've got 1,300
We're both
just
really
sitting in
strong.
resource.
I think we should just take Bonds of Fate. I think we should just take Bonds of Fate. Okay.
Literally gives us just a little bit more safety in terms of the amount of times we can die. I currently, as a watcher, ignoring the wait, your rank? Go.
Remember, you have 300 gold waiting at a career.
Go.
Maybe lead and go left.
Wait, am I going or you?
I think you should go into this career.
Sorry, I'm gonna. Where am I?
Where are my glasses? Not my glasses. Velma finds her glasses, ready to discover if the Darklings were actually a Kevin in the mask the whole time. The other day, someone said Teak. Your Teak Peak emote is suspiciously similar to the Darklings, and I'll be damned if they're not right. It's possible that Darklings are actually just two Kevins in a trench coat. This worries me. Coming into that turn 2 and just clicking on the miracles. If you don't know how to win, just keep clicking until you find the answer. All right, both Rhapsody and I are going to be oriented towards a couple things. Rhapsody oriented towards trying to make sure that he gets the keys. Green key on his path on the left side. Also needs to recall. Also needs to do the other thing, to skip a chest. And all of those things are guaranteed on the left wing. Notably, does not see a merchant until almost all the way up, which is a little tricky unless he dodges to the right, and then he would fail to hit the empowered elite. So it's pretty much going to be hugging the left wall all the way up, right in the gutter guards, as it were. But it looks like we have all the power to do so. Asking a few questions. How will we kill Time Eater? The answer is with our cards. I often see people balk at Time Eater when they've noticed that they've been clicking a lot of cards during their turns. One suggestion that I have previously offered is, what if instead you click less of the cards during your turn? I'm surprised by how infrequently playing lots of cards is what kills me against Time Eater. Now, Time Eater debuffs. Time Eater non-deterministic patterns, and particularly Time Eater draw reduction through slimes and -1 draw, that kills the character. But in general, having to play a few less cards tends to be a fairly manageable mechanic. And certainly here, we know that with things like Brilliance, we can have a blowout turn where we do 200 damage. Simply attack a little less, bide your time, and then set yourself up and end. Or, as we've shown, sometimes making a Conjure Blade. Very powerful moves available to us. Rhapsody here having to play around the Thorns on the Spiker. Lots of very fast decks run into this exact problem, which is when I win by clicking on enemies really, really hard, what happens when they click back? And the answer is it's kind of annoying. Luckily, with things like Talk to the Hand, he is able to outpace that fight with minimal damage. Looking pretty hot, picks up a card so fast, faster than lightning, can't even see it happen. Gets that old key sitting on almost 1,000 gold here, and that's without I Am Rich, baby. Just straight up on 1,000 gold. Absolutely loaded, says Rhapsodian. Going into the Writhing Mass fight. Another fight to where clicking a lot can result in taking a Parasite, but Rhapsody says, I'm not so worried. I've got Blue Candle, I can click through it, I can make more cards out of it, and at this point, starting to think, what if we could get ourselves a Duvu doll? More than anything, what Rhapsody wants to do is find a courier to dig down and get that Duvu doll. That would be a huge increase in power and almost assuredly secure those final combats. Right now, unfortunately, looks between a Raps and a hard place. Can he produce all of the damage that he needs? Answer is reach. Heaven, is it gonna be enough? Draws forward. Can I get to that through violence? Answer yes. There it is. That's another 60 damage. Here's a 48. Dead.
Gotta believe.
Looks, sees, takes. Tantrum in, Crush Joints in. 38 cards now. Thin Deck Daddy died. Excuse me, who are you and what have you done with my family? Rhapsody does not respond when the glasses are on. You can't. You simply can't. And during this time, he can only aggressively click on enemies, on cards, on chest. Just everything gets clicked. Put it in the buggy, as my wife said. Put it in the buggy. Okay, just put it in the buggy. Sees a Master Reality. Tempted. Takes the Wave Hand. Instead, you love to see it, a very powerful card in reducing the overall damage output from the heart, because notably absent from Rhapsody's deck, the ability to consistently block for 60 damage a turn, which is what the heart asks you to do. Frankly, I would say pretty unfair, Senior Heart, okay? Cardiovascular. Don't you think that that's a lot to ask of the player? And the heart simply too thump, and so trying to find some mechanisms to take that 60 and make it into a 45 for almost every turn. Pretty smart. Halt will play out. We're hoping to see more of those talk to the hands. We're loving the way that they look for sure. All right. Sees the Omniscience and asks, what horrible voodoo can I do to the Nemesis on this turn? And the answer is about 100 of it. Sees another Deus Ex Machina, clicks on it, it's so fast.
That should have been the wall.
Just so fast. I like the Deus Ex is Wallop. The Deus Ex is Wallop. You don't know what's in the package until you open it. And it's actually 4 packages.
Yeah, I could have counted better.
Which brings us to something that's actually happened a few times in this fight that I'd love to talk about now, or rather a few times in this run. You may notice that a card is generated in the beginning of the turn. What's happening? Deus Ex Machina is such a cool card for us because it's actually 4 cards twice. The Deus Ex Machina itself exhausts and makes a card, and then all of the miracles also exhaust. So we're getting a ton of tempo out of that card and a ton of optionality. Getting into skip mode now says, I think 41's enough, not sure. Looking at the spoon, but you know what? I think it's a letter opener. The letter opener is not good. Actually, it's a lot of damage. Thinking about the Conjure Blade too. Spoon, I think, is a trap here. I think Spoon is a trap here because we actually like the cards to exhaust regularly. That's how we find our answers. Gotta take the blue key. Hate to see the toy Ornithopter go, but love to see the heart come into view. Don't leave me. Giant Head says, why are you still here? And the answer is, I'm still clicking miracles, baby. Just give me a minute. Once I get to about 20 cards, then we'll go ahead and end it for you. Rhapsody thinking about omnisciencing Vault. Notably, you can do this. Also notably, it only vaults once. So maybe not the strongest imaginable play, but you can do it. It's a possibility. Thinking, what if I had him fasting? Thinking, what if I had a shuriken? That relic exists. I haven't seen a shuriken in a long time. And definitely it would be welcome in this run. And this is a good opportunity to talk about the power that be Preserved Insect. Rhapsody doing about 125 damage in the first 2 turns there. Also doing 125 damage in this fight. Preserved Insect, pretty freaking good common relic. Certainly will add up its damage potential throughout the run, and it takes some pressure off of your deck's need for front load to allow you to focus more on the scaling options that will kill bosses and the burst block options that you can use to survive through those spooky hallway fights. Rhapsody closing this fight up in short order. And every time the Scrawl shows up, it's just a good day because there's an abundance of energy. You know, all you need to know is that you've got power. And Rhapsody looking, Rhapsody thinking, Rhapsody potentially blaspheming, does not. And also thinking Stance Potion, one of the strongest potions in the game, might take it here with a Power Potion, might not, leaves it. Says Power Potion, Strength Potion is good enough for me. Also keeping the Fairy in a Bottle, which I quite like as a pick here. Going forward towards both the Time Eater and the Act 4 combats. Notably, no more elites in this act. Simply thinking about what else can I accomplish while I'm here. Almost assuredly thinking about, well, you know, maybe doesn't go to another store with only 483 gold left. Maybe saves that just to get the maximum value out of the Act 4 store, which I don't mind.
T, can I ask you to just talk a little about the interaction of Vault and the Time Eater? Because that is something that I'm focusing very heavily. Like, I'm thinking about that the majority of the time that I'm clicking these cards right now.
Absolutely. So Vault is in line for the upcoming Time Eater fight because of a particular interaction. Time Eater's Clockwork, okay? No, I'm not talking about the artist. Every 12 card plays, consistently across turns, Time Eater ends the turn and then takes theirs. Or do they? Vault says, you end your turn and then get another one. Okay, it's time walk. You just get another turn, you deny the enemy a turn. How does Vault work with the 12th card play in the Time Eater fight? And the answer is advantageously to the player. Advantageously to the player. I liked the Tory there, by the way. You can click on Vault as your 12th card, and you will end your turn from the Vault while ending your turn from Time Eater and still deny Time Eater that next play. And so Vault is a really, really cool piece of tech to maneuver around the turn end. You need a lot of energy available to do this because you need to line up exactly 12 card plays. So
Are you up
need a
at
lot
this
of
point as
energy
well?
to be sure that you can do that. What?
Are you up at this point as well?
Up?
As in, are you at the final rest?
I haven't even started.
You haven't even started? Okay, this is on you now.
We've just been playing your game, baby.
Yeah, sorry about that. Whew. Ha.
No,
Yes.
why? No, it's get it. You've got to go. I've got.
Oh, no, it's all good. You've got to go fast as well. Teak here trying to consider the paths that he has access to, knows that he only has one thing that he needs to still get for his completion of the 3 gems. That is only going to be 1 recall at a certain campfire. May not necessarily want to leave that late. We chose to do it a little bit earlier, giving us the ability here to rest, which we're going to be doing. But hey, that is on the screen that we're not looking at the moment. Instead, the things that we are looking at is the talk to the hands and the access that Teak is going to get to a little bit of block, a little bit of setup. We see Teak here setting himself up in a situation where the rest of the fight is going to flow out quite calmly. Has the ability to enter Divinity at pretty much any choice that he should like. Also has that explosive potion. May not necessarily need it, but Teak's deck does lack a little more AoE than ours. Fasting comes up with that beta art, looking damned good right there in the corner. It's got the ridiculous amount of energy, frankly, that Teak is able to generate basically every single turn. It's looking quite good. A lot of an aggressive turn coming out from the enemies. They Vault is already available. One of the best things, one of the best tools. We'll see in the Darkling fight, I used Vault 3 times or something like that. Vault is an incredibly powerful tool. In particular, it is kind of wild that both of our decks, I mean, same seed, have Vaults and Talk to the Hands out the wazoo. If you want to go fast and you want to be able to do that regardless of the fact that you are playing Watcher, baby, those are damned good includes to make sure that you don't die whilst doing so. Teak here trying to decide whether or not the Master Reality is even a play for the turn. It's not worth the energy, apparently. It's got the possibility of using instead a Prostrate there, as well as an Inner Piece in order to jump back out of that turn. Kills the frontliner using the Explosive Potion. Is going to be taking 11 this turn. Teak says that is A-okay. I'll take 11 this turn. Y'all are going to take 80 next turn. Get ready for it. This Tantrum and Worship both sitting here. Available tools to help these tools spend the rest of their lives inside of the dirt, down under the ground. Teak immediately assessing these cards, saying, hey, there is no value here necessarily for us, deciding that the store directly ahead, possibly choosing to throw, all of these relatively good, especially with the store directly in the next space. It's kind of hard to decide which of these should go. The Inner Peace Potion, the gold, picks up that blue candle, now has the ability to accept all of this, the curses that I've sent his way over at the courier if he should want to just get another card that exhausts in the deck. Yeah, it's entirely possible. Teak here also having a look at some of the other available options. A Dark Shackle's a particularly good, useful tool against the next floor. Takes a Toxic Egg in anticipation of picking up the Dark Shackles, immediately giving it an upgrade. Not necessarily a particularly expensive upgrade, especially if Teak continues to take more skills, as he does, is looking at this Liquid Memories as well as the Duplication Potion, trying to decide which is going to give him the most value in the future. Takes a deep breath. You must take a deep breath. I do about 30 seconds of breathing before we start any of these recordings. It's entirely necessary, friends. Look, it happens. Hey, look, there's a Vigilance happening on the board as well, and 3 extra cards being drawn next turn from a Pocket Watch, as Teak is going to be dealing damage to the enemies through those Bronze Thorns this turn. That Brilliance in hand, as well as a Worship, kind of baiting Teak to try and find another Worship and just knock one of these bad boys out of the sky immediately. Teak trying to decide whether he has the damage to follow through on a Blasphemy plan to kill all of these enemies in this turn. It's a little hard to judge. It's going to require a little bit of mathematics. It looks like Teak does not believe that he has it, at the absolute least, currently generated in hand, and doesn't have that much card generation left available in the hand after that fact, especially considering the Foresight was the leftmost card in the hand there. Teak does have a... do you have a Judgment in this deck, or was it generated? You don't have a Judgment, it was generated. Yeah. doesn't have the ability to just throw that out against these bad boys. Here, the back line is going to make itself a little bit more thorny for the future as well, so it is going to very much require one or two particularly large dunks on that bad boy to take him down without taking too much damage back in return. The talk to the hand's not necessarily useful when it encourages you to use as many attacks as you can, and the enemy discourages you from using as many attacks as you can, at the very least until the talk to the hand is upgraded, at which point you can get a little closer to parity with just a little bit of block in the interim. Teak here just styling all over the enemy, generating the block despite not having the upgrade on those and saying, hey, you don't even get to dictate what I do. Teak deciding to get rid of the plated armor there for a more permanent source of extra defense. Not going to be taking a regret, but might take one of these bad boys. Look at those rares. Immediately gets a scroll. The scroll immediately upgrades itself, courtesy of the toxic egg that Teak had taken in the previous fight. Has the ability to send across 2 upgrades.
Would you take 2 damage if you had 2 blue candles?
Yeah, I imagine you would.
I think you would.
Choosing to save a little bit of money there, has a couple shops still upcoming in the future, has Tantrum and Talk to the Hand available here in the first hand as well as a Worship, has the ability to get pretty aggressive, but it's also trying to consider whether or not the possibility exists next turn that there is no defense, no segue out of rage available for him, and then the Nemesis just tries to 45. Also making consideration around the pocketbook there. The Talk to the Hands both come out in full fury alongside the Wave of the Hand. This enemy is going to regret having ever decided to become intangible, because all they're going to do while they're intangible is become weaker and weaker and have an enemy more well defended. That omniscience being generated there, giving Teak the ability to generate any 2 copies of a card that he should like in his deck. Not gonna generate Vault because they'll still be intangible next turn. It's an interesting one, the edge cases around Vault. Particularly, I think they're quite consistent, but also deeply, deeply interesting, even if it would give him the ability to hold the Wave of the Hand until the next turn, deciding not to go in that direction, instead just throwing out some hits against the enemy in order to get the defense generated from the Talks to the Hands that are already generated on the enemy. Looking for what he is going to have access to in the future, possibly looking for a giant setup on this turn. The enemy has their intangibility, looking for some way to guarantee. Nice. Divinity comes out next turn. The Devotion double played in that situation means he is definitely going to have the Divinity up next turn. He's going to be able to throw that against the enemy. The amount of Divinity, or rather Devotion, that is being generated by that card is going to guarantee that he has the ability, with only a single Worship each turn, to jump back into Divinity. This is an access to a huge amount of energy for Teak here. May not necessarily even be required with a Brilliance in the hand, and oh no, the enemy's not vulnerable, they just happen to have 1 strength, and that looks a little like vulnerability when you're looking very quickly at these kinds of things. It's not just speed playing, it's speed commentating as well. That's how we gotta go about it. Possibly deciding here to use a Vault in order to be able to keep the enemy out of an intangible state, assuming he doesn't have the ability to generate enough damage for the rest of the turn. Tries his absolute darndest, doesn't have it at the time, knows that he will have it in the near future, immediately in Divinity. The game can't even keep up with him. Neither can the stream at this point, but Teak really just running all over the top of all the enemies there, getting another copy of the Deus Ex Machina, setting up Teak for the ability to throw out a ridiculous amount of damage in the opening turn, a little assisted by the back preparation, giving 2 extra options in that opening hand. We see here a little bit of variance between Teak and my deck in how we may end up approaching this bad boy right here. Teak getting that Master Reality really early on, a Deus Ex Machina relatively soon thereafter, in fact 2 Deus Ex Machinas. Having the ability to generate a lot of upgraded cards, trying to decide whether or not maybe Alpha is the series play here, hovering over it for just a little second before deciding that Talk to the Hand is the easier path around it. Gets a copy of Rebound, itself upgraded, has the ability to rebound something like a Worship, does exactly that, pushes the Worship back to the top of the deck, now has the ability to use things like the Omniscience or even a Scroll to double play another Worship, get Divinity in Divinity, literally just for the boon of 3 energy, so not necessarily great for doing the Omniscience with right now, unless you should happen to end up out of this form and wants to generate some damage for it. Unfortunately, we don't see very, very many damage dense cards remaining in the deck that do not require that Teak changes his stance midway through. We see a double play of a Worship there, getting even more energy back after a Calm had been activated prior. The enemy is holding some vulnerability. The Conjure Blades is a good setup for a later turn. However, Teak is trying to decide whether or not he has the ability to be a little bit more aggressive against them this turn. Will always have the ability to hit him again if he does happen to roll into the Parasite that the enemy may want to give them, but also not the worst thing that could possibly happen. Parasites are going to be completely fine for us, despite the fact that I've been throwing them away at every available opportunity. Does end up going with the Alpha play, giving himself a little bit of a back out should he not be able to generate the damage that he wants in any of these turns following. Has the Beta played there, leaving an Alpha deeper in the deck. A situation where Teak generates an Omniscience at this point would be particularly spiced. Not necessary though, the Omega already finds its way into the hand. Now does the damage at the end of the turn rather than at the start of the next turn. That's been a patch that was about a year old at this point, but it is still relevant and worth noting because it now has an immediacy to its action that Teak is going to be able to take advantage of here, setting himself up for a much easier kill next turn, only having to meet the much lower threshold of about 20 damage before the enemy will just die at the end of the turn to the Alpha. Beta Omega. We see Teak here generating defense for himself just in case this should happen to go a little longer than required. The Expunger left in the deck, but Teak knowing, hey, I have the ability to stunt on this enemy in any which way I should desire at this point. They are deceased and do not yet know it. Absolutely beautiful play here. E, the strongest play in the game, possibly at this point, decides instead to style on him with the Expunger. You absolutely have to. If you're going to generate it, you might as well send it out against him as well. Taking a little second here to consider whether or not another Mental Fortress shores him up against the defense that he kind of wants in the deck. I like it. I like it. There are more talk to the hands coming up in the near future. However, not a ridiculous amount of multi-attacks for us, and especially in Teak's deck, not a ridiculous amount of attacks. Interestingly, a lot of them coming out of the generation effects. Took a battle smite myself in order to try and generate a couple more, just so that we could try and get a couple more multi-attacks on board and deck. Another Master Reality really, really early here for Teak, giving him the ability to try and style all of the top of this giant head. Those miracles in particular are great in this fight, not only generating energy, not only generating a card, but also incrementing the enemy's slow triggers. Teak here deciding whether or not he ever wants to stop not stopping. Has the ability to dig extremely deep in the deck, get a ridiculous flurry of energy from all of these pre-upgraded miracles that are going to be giving 2 energy instead of 1, courtesy of the Master Reality that was earlier played. Teak deciding here to go for a Vault and hold this for the next turn. An interesting play. I do like it. Sets himself up with a better aggression turn for the next turn and a full turn's worth of time to do it. Only needs 1 more in order to get into some sort of devotion here. Unfortunately, has the attack Tantrum that is also going to take immediately out of devotion. And 2 flurries that have just been generated directly behind Teak there. Great options here. Heavily incentivizing that Teak plays a bunch of cards, which will, again, increment the Giant Head slow counter, such that Teak is able to do a ridiculous amount of damage, even in absence of some tools, such as, oh, I don't know, you know, the vulnerability, that kind of thing. Vulnerability is nice, but if you don't need it, guess what? It's not necessary. That Blasphemy just staying in hand. Teak getting a little bit weakened here, but knowing that no amount of weakness can prevent the amount of damage that this Giant Head is going to take. The Giant Head taking an incredibly non-aggressive path here, just deciding, hey, you know what? I know I'm going to die. I just want it to hurt less. That's exactly what they've said to themselves when they got out of bed this morning. When they got out of bed this morning, they did not choose violence. They chose to be the subject of violence. And hey, look, you only gotta respect someone making a decision like that. The bit rate not even being able to carry up here. Another Deus Ex Machina. It's so good. Another Deus Ex Machina there. Appearing for Teak, him getting 2 Deus Ex Machinas plus from my own deck as well. The bitrate just cannot handle the amount of miracles on the screen. Guess what Teak believes in the moment?
It's awful.
Believes in miracles, you sexy thing. You tentacle of the spire of some kind. It's doing its wibbly wobblies. It may not even have the time to be able to do anything to Teak here. Teak here with a ridiculous flurry of energy, just deciding, what do I even want to do? Here I am in creative mode, Slay the Spire at this point. We're not in survival, we're in creative mode at this point. Teak having the ability at any point if he wants to just hit a keystroke and start flying. IDDQD already set. We know what's up. That Omniscience generated available for the next hand gives Teak the ability to fish for basically any win he would want this turn. Another scroll also available in hand. Energy a little bit lacking. The Omniscience, thankfully, having its cost reduced there, giving the ability for Teak to get into Divinity through playing a Worship this turn, and then trying to throw out as many cards as should happen to follow. A Brilliance available in the remainder of the deck, but we'll see whether or not Teak goes down to it. There is a scroll that does have the ability to get him there. And the pressure points and Consecrate go out. It is, color commentary is intriguing as a kind of thing to try and do when you are watching a PowerPoint. And Indignation possibly proposing some vulnerability here. However, the third eye also
Discord.
giving a lot more.
Hold. Discord.
Discord.
Pull it together.
Discord's doing okay.
Together.
It's doing okay at the moment.
Should we reboot it? Is it okay?
It's absolutely okay. Continue.
Okay.
Available options on the screen here, a little... Actually, you know what? We will take a pause. Sorry, I thought it was going to...
Okay.
And we're back into it. We have resolved the frame rate issues there. Teak looking down the barrel of a very, very angry Reptomancer here, trying to decide how he is going to set himself up for the possibility of a giant amount of incoming damage next turn, or even if he needs to. It's entirely possible he instead elects to just kill the enemy before they can kill him. We'll see what is in the heart of the cards here. That Tantrum definitely pushing in a very specific direction here. Not a huge amount of support for the rest of the hand. However, the third eye gives Teak a lot of choices that he has access to for the next turn's setup. Has the ability here, especially with the weakening of that enemy, specifically the weakening of that enemy via their strength. They're going to deal 2 times the amount of damage that they were previously going to deal. If they have -10 strength, they're not dealing any damage, even if you are in Wrath. Has the ability to end this turn in a Tantrum, but is also considering whether or not that is going to be entirely a good idea, given the possibility of the Reptomancer just being so dang aggressive next turn if it really wants to. Elects to play the Tantrum, setting the target of the dagger up for a little bit of an easier kill here, is able to be claimed now directly as a result of that by the Consecrate. Unfortunately, Teak in the position where, never mind, he does have the ability to actually transition back out of that. I forgot about the Worship that was played in the first round, leaving another option for exiting his wrathful state that should have happened to exist at that time. Here, getting rid of a couple of longer-term investment choices, deciding that he has the ability to generate a lot more damage, has not a gigantic damage draw. However, these miracles give a little bit more insight there. A Consecrate for some free damage, as well as a Wheel Kick to be able to refill the hand with a little bit more damage as well, setting Teak up very, very effectively to be able to absolutely style over the top of this Reptomancer, send him straight to the grave. Who needs that? Dust off of my shoulder, effectively. We see Teak here trying to get the APM strats on the Duvu doll. If you click it enough times, it will actually purchase itself. That's not true. It's entirely possible he instead decides to go for an Apotheosis, and Apotheosis is a rare card as well, so it's entirely possible that ends up getting shuffled back into my deck. A secret weapon that I picked up, also now available target to shuffle into Teak's deck. A generation of an aggressive card in hand, as well as a generation of a random card from the Dead Branch. It's a particularly good tool at this juncture. We see Teak here with a Worship and Talk to the Hand and Mental Fortress in the opening hand. Not a ridiculously good hand for the sake of setup for the future, but it'll make do. It'll make do. Sets up a Mental Fortress for the future, as well as holding a Worship, Tantrum, and a Flying Sleeves. All as good tools for a later turn. That Wave of the Hand, having the ability to propagate its weakness across the entire enemy field here, even just through a single start swap, is a particularly powerful thing to do when all of your enemies are going to be doing that. Plays out another Mental Fortress, is now fully engaged in Stance Revolution, is going to be fearing no evil from that frontliner because they are way too busy being weakened to heck and back. We don't see the ability to exit here with a Worship. Instead, the Worship is going to be held for a later turn. Instead, the ability to exit is provided by a Empty Fist, should Teak even want it. He does indeed, sets himself up in a position to be able to use any sort of worshipping next turn to be able to get himself back in to a Divinity state. It's entirely possible that is not even required. Gets himself up to 8 with a good old Prostrate right there. It's entirely possible another one of those happens to get generated. The Tantrum sets him up in a state where he has the ability to throw out an Indignation whilst utilizing the multiple hits that it has on a Talk to the Hand against the frontline target. We talked previously about the fact that a ideal speedrun for the Watcher wants Tantrum. It wants Tantrum. It also wants Wreath of Flame. It also wants Vault. It also wants Talk to the Hand. It wants these as tools to defend in the rare turns that it actually requires doing so. Again, assuming a non-seeded situation where you have some plan to just cheese the final. We get a Consecrate across the board there, and then a single target has a Strength Potion appear, as well as another Worship. Is deciding whether or not a skill potion or a dex potion or a strength potion is necessarily better here. I like the choice of the strength potion in that particular position. The Juzu Bracelet, a very good thing to send across such that I have the ability to avoid no events for the remainder of the game.
I guess I just go.
I guess you just go. Teak here
baby.
with the full set of keys, upgrades the devotion. Should that come across, I'm going to be hella happy that happened to get an upgrade. Gets 2 copies of Deus Ex Machina here, as well as a vault in the opening hand. So Teak immediately thinking about whether or not he has the ability to hit the full 12 cap and then throw a vault thereafter. Also possibly looking for some way to guarantee a future hand that should be particularly powerful. If that is not available to him, it isn't. Decides not to go with the Foresight in that position, instead using the Vault just to get to another turn, using the Talk to the Hands as the way that he is going to scale up a defensive mechanism throughout this entire fight. Is also very likely to be doing that with the Master Reality, generating more powerful cards, as well as the card I forgot the name of, Mental Fortress, which is also going to be damned important in this situation. Wave of the Hand and the Simmering Fury setting up a very, very valuable future turn. Simmering Fury in particular, even just being generated from the Miracle, not even required from the deck. Has 2 more cards he can play this turn before the enemy is like, hey, you know what? That's enough of you. It's time for me. The time he actually manages to take a turn here. However, the Spirit Shield provides a giant amount of defense in a future turn. Not a giant amount of devotion yet available here. Still sitting, lurking in the deeps of the deck. No ways out of the stance that Teak is currently engaged in. 45 damage coming in, meaning Teak is just going to be, oh no, never mind, there was a Tranquility that I completely ignored. Has the ability to do pretty much whatever he wants with the rest of that hand. That's got entries and exits, and entries and exits, and entries and exits, just out the wazoo. Here deciding to leave the enemy on 7 for their clock. Yeah, it's entirely possible, but what was it? Actually, no, that's a question. You focus. The decision that Teak is going to be making here consistently is how many cards he can leave for another turn if he is going to leave the clock running for another turn. So there, the decision to end on 7 is the decision to be able to play 5 cards next turn. Here, Teak leveraging the amount of damage that he has the ability to do for the sake of the defense that he is going to get from the Talk to the Hand. This is going to become a little bit dangerous as we start getting even later into this fight and the enemy gets closer and closer to purging all of that kind of stuff. Teak here probably trying to mentally set up at this time some way to nuke the enemy down, bypassing their entire second phase if possible. An Apotheosis making itself known here in the hand. Doesn't have the ability to upgrade any of the cards that will future be generated because they're already upgraded from the Master Reality. However, it can upgrade the cards in the base deck that are not yet themselves upgraded. The clock is currently at 8. Teak deciding this is probably another setup turn with only 1 aggressive card in hand in the Tantrum and 1 aggressive card in hand in particular that it does not look like he may even want to play. Playing around the edge of existence here, possibly giving me a tombstone at some point, which I will be able to utilize to draw another card. It exhausts.
There'll be no tombstone.
No tombstones. No tombstones. He's got a plan. This man got a plan. Let's see it play out. The battle hymn itself gets thrown out. There is a bunch of divinity and devotion going on. 2 worships even being held for a future hand. 3 more cards allowed to be played this turn. The enemy is going to be taking a turn off to consider their life immediately after this. And Teak is going to be trying to throw out 148 damage through weakness. Does have divinity, does have blasphemy, even if he just wants to jump into it immediately. The generation from the smite has really, really helped out there, getting a lot of extra damage, a foreign influence, having the ability to draw for basically any damage you should like. Finish it off with the Fiend Fire. That seems
like you're about to beat that same fight. Rhapsody
Baby.
ready to take it into the time eater, baby. Certainly a lot of miracles, but if there were ever proof that having a lot of cards to click does not necessarily make one slug food, there it was. Plenty of opportunities in that fight to either slow down, bide your time, and the primary miracle that we performed was not clicking on every attack. Difficult, but definitely possible. And Rap's looking for the same line. How do I meet the difference between getting enough damage to push you towards that split, but also scaling up to where I can ultimately do the full needed 456 damage? And at this point, considering that the answer may just be vault, hit, vault, hit, vault, hit, vault, hit. Lots of options coming up. Had that Conjure Blade in hand, thought about playing out the Miracles to Conjure and Expunger, decided not to, went for the full block there, but did get that Xaxes clock. A beautiful turn 1. Going into a turn 2, looking at Vault in hand, so again an opportunity to just bail out if desired. Handful of smites. You love to see it. Honestly, they're working really nicely for this fight because smites are also card draw. That smite is just a big old Master Blaster quick slash for Rhapsody right now. Vaults right on out of there and asks, what do I do? How do I avoid 66 damage? And is the answer Vault again, or can I simply win? Answer, just the fastest, most brutal time eater fight ever. Absolutely sauced that fool. Put the butter in the little put the butter in the little thing. Put the butter, cook the slug, cook the snail. Escar got him, is what Rhapsody said.
Go? Escar, get the hell out of here, buddy! 47 cards styling on him, sorry. Wait a second. No, let's jump back to your screen. I just did a fight. It's like, wait, I didn't even put the glasses on. It's the whole style sheet.
Can't believe you were able to go that fast.
Yeah,
without the glasses.
Without the glasses, exactly. They seem damned important in the way that they modify that. That talk to the hand, just providing so much damned value. Teak knowing here that he wants to click that that Deus Ex Machina is not necessarily available, but hey, looks like it might necessarily be available for me. None of those potions really appealing to Teak much more than the potions he already had access to in his bar. Has a plan for that strength potion in the final fight, baby. I deeply believe it. That Master Reality setting him up, as well as the Omniscience tucked a little behind Teak here, and a Worship in the hand, setting Teak up for a position where he may be considering whether or not he has the ability to just dunk on the enemy on turn 1. Taking out a single enemy is a little hard without deep, gigantic attacks that are immediately generated in Teak's deck. What we really would like to see from the end of this fight in particular is just some big thump. Something that gives Teak the ability to just go, hey, you hold this. Ragnarok in particular comes to mind, obviously, for all of the triggers to take the hand that it may have access to at the time. The Dark Shackles, unfortunately, in this position, feeling a little rough because the enemy cannot necessarily have it affected on them, but sets up the enemy to be able to be affected by more Talk to the Hands in the future, also competing for that debuff slot. Wave of the Hand and Talk to the Hand available at points in the future, but Teak here, taking a little bit more of an aggressive line, leaves himself with a Brilliance available for the future and goes back into Tranquility, has 19 and 12, 31 damage incoming this turn, is only going to be taking 6. That draws him down to the rest of this hand, holding 1 Worship. There's a Sands of Time in there as well as a Brilliance. That's damage, baby. If he needed damage, that'll do it. And damn, don't it do it. There goes the spear, the shield, goofily standing over on the other side, slowly lumbering around as it comes to terms with the fact that his compatriot here, having stood for millions of years unperturbed, has been murdered by Teak's deck here. Teak deciding that, you know what? I'm not going to give you time to grieve. I think the easiest way for you to process this is going to be to meet them in hell yourself. Start throwing out some damage against the shield over there on the left-hand side. The shield has its own plan for how it is going to generate a gigantic amount of defense in the following turn. However, Teak leaves himself in an aggressive form and has foresight to be able to make sure that he has the ability to dig for exactly the right things that he might want on a later turn. That secret weapon possibly coming in clutch if needed. Unfortunately, won't exhaust at this point because of the Apotheosis. It's interesting, but will not overfill his hand in that way. Has a Wreath of Flame and Tantrum, setting him up for the big play. I'd heavily recommend it so we can see, yep, that was doing 30s. Wreath of Flame is modified by whether you are in Wrath or whether you're in Divinity as well, making it one of the gigantic tools available here. Teak having a little bit of look at the tools that he has available here, deciding not to send. Yes, I totally agree. Go for the heart.
I'm going to kill the heart.
We see that strength pick up Ooh, a talk to the hand already immediately available here in the opening hand. Immediately plays the skill potion as well, trying to give himself a little bit of a lay of the land of where he is going to be going for the rest of the fight. The scroll giving him the ability to very specifically choose what cards he wants to get down to. Make sure to leave 3 spaces in his hand after playing the first card that was not a block card, such that he had the ability to draw from the Centennial Puzzle as well, just eking out a little bit more draw on this early turn, such that he has the ability to do some more setup. An Indignation in a perfect position right here, setting up vulnerability for, let's be real, probably the entire life of the heart. Teak setting himself up with another talk to the hand. The heart here very, very, very much regretting that it is agreeing to talk to those hands instead of directly to Teak, taking it up with them. 2 mental fortresses generated in the next hand, as well as an establishment as well. Teak may be here deciding to go, you know what? This was a good turn of setup. Although also trying to consider whether or not he may want to change a stance at this point. Does have access to divinity, not too far off. It's a little far, but it's not too far off. It's a worship and a prostrate will do it. We see the mental fortress getting generated out here after the kick to the enemy's face. They can only take a maximum 300 damage per turn, so they are still a guaranteed 3 away. It's possible that Teak is trying to decide whether or not he has the ability to clock the enemy this turn. I'm not certain you have the ability to generate 300 damage each turn, but that might just be a misestimation on my part. No, is instead going for the inner piece to be able to get back out of that form and then back into it. Gives no hex whatsoever about this enemy. Gives straight to hell, takes a go for the eyes, and also draws into another foresight, has the vigilance to be able to jump back out. 10 block anytime Teak should happen to change stance here from those mental fortresses, setting themselves up in a very good position. First attack from the enemy here is the big attack. That's something I'm going to have to tuck away in my own brain space. The prostrate does happen to find its way into the hand, as well as a Just Lucky. Seeing another Just Lucky and a scroll coming up in the near future. Teak here generating a ridiculous amount of cards, including a David form, managing to make sure that he will scale into the late game should he need it. A Reach Heaven also providing a giant dense amount of damage in a future turn. Teak here going, you know what? This is a-okay. I'm happy to take 21 damage here, 22 damage here. That is not going to be a problem for us. Teak also in the position of trying to decide how he's going to defend against the incoming 48. It's entirely possible the plan is a half turn, vault another half turn, and then some extra solution that should happen to be apparent over the course of that time. Has the ability to throw away a void such that he does not get a negative energy in an upcoming draw. May decide instead to keep it such that he has the ability to generate another card with it instead, especially should it end up being drawn in a situation where it wasn't going to affect. It does take away an energy here, but it is also worth noting Teak is able to generate a ridiculous amount of energy of his own accord. The Brilliance going out here for 45, setting up for a, well, not particularly setting up for, but precedent to a Just Lucky being played immediately thereafter. The incoming damage is looking scary exclusively as a result of being in Wrath at this point. It would be happily accepted as soon as the empty body ends up getting played near the end of this turn. We see the Burn Vault defends. All good tools. The Vault's a little bit of a wacky one. He's trying to decide whether or not he may have a better result from playing a Vault and then defending on a later turn as well, being able to push more aggression here before the enemy does another phase of buffs on itself. Also, important to note, does have the ability to draw a ridiculous amount and play more vaults. It's entirely possible his plan ends up being something like, I'm gonna get back to that Dark Shackles. I know it's a cycle away from the deck, but hey, I'm on my way back there. Don't you worry. You just...
I burned it.
You just sit pretty. Oh, he burned it. Never mind. I apologize. That is my default state. It's all good. Fine. That's my response. Instead of I apologize, fine. He burned it. 9 by 12 looking lethal, but the vault itself not looking that bad. Setting up for Master Reality. We can also see, by the way, the vaults are not incrementing or not resetting the amount of damage the enemy has the access to take in any particular turn. So Teak here trying to guarantee that he has the ability to get the enemy under that 300. So if he happens to do more vaulting in the future, he has the ability to take them out in a single turn thereafter. Foresight and many talk to the hands, and Tantrums are standing there saying, hey, do you need us? Do you really need us? Teak saying no. Has the ability to play out a couple more setup cards here. Has only one devotion at the moment, so the worship has the ability to be played this turn if he should like to just set himself up, or instead opts to keep it in hand such that he has the choice of when the devotion will actually strike, when he will actually enter into divinity. It's possible he wants to play some Wrath cards earlier than that. It's entirely up to him. Plays an Apotheosis here, getting it out of hand, generating another card. We have the Wreath of Flame also dutifully existing. Unfortunately, a Deus Ex Machina being generated into the hand rather than drawn nullifies a significant amount of its effect. This Brilliance here dealing a gigantic amount of damage. Teak absolutely styling on that heart.
4 turns. GG. Rhapsody proceeds to follow once again in the hallowed steps and halls of Watcher A and B.
Whoops. Sorry, I just quickly messed something up with the record on that side. My bad.
No sweat. Looking at the store here, seeing that melange, the hairdo that we skipped so many turns ago, thinking about that fasting and goes ahead and clicks it. A card that makes the rest of your cards stronger. It's pretty good stuff, and it's got some fantastic beta art, by the way. Wondering, once again, are we gonna Alpha Strike? With so many vaults, you can really decide which turn is a real turn. You can effectively just mulligan almost every single draw with these decks. We have so many freaking vaults. It feels like we have Nalot's Gift, but we don't. I have no clue how we managed to roll so many rare cards. Looking at the hand, looking at the damage, thinking, I don't really want to go into the heart with so much damage online, but remembers also that we have Strings of Fate, which means you can die 3 times in the heart fight. Truly a blessed position to be in. Still looking for that out, though. Still looking for that kill. Looking at the Blasphemy, thinking about it, considering, sees Apotheosis, don't stop, continue instead. What can we make? Wreath of Flame is online. 1 down, 1 to go, turn 1, just freaking smash, says Rhapsody as his colossal fist crushes down, sends me an old coin on the way out. Tiki, you can take this one with you. Carry that right out of the Spire. Go buy something nice. Don't spend it all in one place, says Rhapsody, ever wise. Heading into the hard fight, notably even more lives because of the Fairy in a Bottle, and I'm really interested to see, once there's a space in hand, what this power potion is going to create. Could have a big impact on the fight, and it looks like it's a Deva form, all the energy all the time. Briefly thought about that devotion, but decided, you know what, let's just be able to click every card on every turn forever, which is, I think, a very reasonable line to have taken. Looking, thinking, sees the miracle, says, is it worth continuing, or do I just want to hold it for the next turn? Far over the pocket watch at this point, so it's nice to have the effective draw of the miracle online to help to counter the heart's, once again, ultimately very rude plan to just do so much freaking damage. But now we're looking at a hand. There's that vault, so we're back into the world of, do I want to have a turn yet or not? We could reset this fight so many times, super reincarnation over here until we're finally strong enough to take it out. Getting into Divinity almost right away, which means Brilliance is going to consistently be smacking. From here, the damage required should be no sweat. Rhapsody just thinking, how do I minimize the amount of pain that I accept from turn to turn? Curious about putting Tantrum in the draw, curious about Vault, curious about Simmering Fury. Truly, there are very many lines here available to Rhapsody, and that's exactly the name of the game. Goes for the fasting. Looking at the talk to the hand, I love this. You can really see a demonstration of both the player's knowledge and also existential doubt playing out while trying to decide, if all paths go to Rome, how the hell do I choose the path? It's really a nasty position to put the player in, to have so much power and so much time with which to wield it, but the desire to do it fast anyway. 121 damage with the smite means that the heart is well on its way to the grave, looking for a mechanism to reduce that 6x12 here, and the answer is simply skip the turn. Seems to be a theme being generated in this fight. Notably, Rhapsody's deck at 49 cards couldn't quite eclipse into the 50 card range, a half a century deck you love to see. Thinking about the empty body as a mechanism to just go ahead and reduce, reuse, recycle, and get the hell out of dodge. Sitting on 2 smites, 305 damage left on the heart. 2 to 3 turns maximum is what I see in the future for this enemy. And by the way, Pennib just picked it up, and it's already procced 2, 3, maybe 4 times. Absolutely freaking playing some attacks. Miracle, miracle, miracle. Do you, Rhapsody, believe in miracles? 2 thump, 2 thump. Clearly the answer is yes. Be smote.
Be smart. Hey, Teak.
GG. Hey, Raps.
Can I ask you to give me a very, very, very quick version of the plug that you have the ability to do off of a script in your head, and then straight to the outro?
What plug? For what this is? For
Oh, no. To catch you live over on the Twitch.
Oh yeah. His name is Rhapsody. He makes content on YouTube. You can find him at youtube.com/ what is it? Rhapsody Assassin. Do you have a, is that a thing?
Rhapsody
you can also
Plays.
see him live
Rhapsody Assassin
on
does it too.
twitch.tv/Rhapsody Plays. I'm Sneaky Teak. You can find me at twitch.tv/Sneaky Teak. I play video games 5 days of the week. I play all sorts of games like Spire and other games. You can find me there live 7:30 p.m. Central almost every day. Thanks for being here. It's been a really good run. See you later. Bye.